Brendan here. In this video, I'm going to attempt to politely defend and further support my claims from a video that I posted from the other day. I was at an event and someone from the audience asked, how does one repair or rehabilitate one's gut? So then I referenced Dr. Jeffrey Bland and I said he's got the 4R system, and I said it would be wise to eliminate problematic foods such as gluten, dairy, sugar, processed foods, nightshades, and lectins. And so there was a comment from a follower, D. White Coleman, MD. Thank you very much, first of all, for this opportunity to really dive into this even more. First of all, he says, what a bunch of BroScience nonsense. And then he says, nightshades and lectins are a non-issue. Simply categorizing multiple foods like gluten and sugar as having the same effect on the gut, shredding it, is all nonsense. There's no such condition. And if you're suggesting leaky gut, that is not an accepted diagnosis. This is not science. Celiac disease requires a biopsy for proper diagnosis, and non-celiac gluten sensitivity can be considered after that has only been ruled out. Just because you reference someone doesn't mean you're presenting the facts correctly. The lectin issue is also a non-issue. You are eliminating foods with no proof they contribute to an illness. Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Allow me to humor you, or at least consider some of these ideas. All right, disease delusion, Dr. Jeffrey Bland. Here's the first reference. He is the father of functional medicine, and there is actually a term from leaky gut. It's called endotoxemia. That is the scientific term. The answer is yes. The term is endotoxemia. It means that toxic substances produced in the intestinal tract are indeed leaking through the barrier into the blood. Research gastroenterologists, also known as doctors, call it leaky gut syndrome. They have confirmed that it primarily occurs after the consumption of foods high in fat and sugar, or from ingesting other causatic foods or chemicals in food substances. The leaks allow the entry of substances the barrier normally prohibits. These substances spill through into the intestines, where the intestinal immune system sees them as foreigners and then takes defensive action and then turns up the dial on the genes that control the production of inflammatory messengers. So that's one. Now, let's just dive into lectins and the role that they have. So I want to reference this publication, Vitamin Research News. This was also referenced in one of the other books that I'm going to reference because I like to cross-reference. And so I'm just going to go to page 6 here, and I'm going to read out, again, in verbatim. And so, guys, this video is probably going to be about 7 to 10 minutes. But if you like this, if you want to be educated, then this is where it's at. So lectins are a class of proteins that are found common in foods, especially grains, seeds, beans, nuts, some fruits and vegetables, and seafood. They act as a sort of immune system for the plants by sticking themselves to structural carbohydrates, sugars, of invaders. When we eat foods containing these proteins, we risk lectin attachments to the structural carbohydrates, again, sugars, antigens, found in the gut immune system. Our unique genetic makeup and the state of health will determine the lectins we are sensitive to and how will we react to them. It is important to note that many people will report they do not feel any digestive disturbances. That does not mean that lectins are not affecting them. Lectin damage may be cumulative and show up as pathology years later. Lectin attacks the gut innate inflammation that may be expressed in other parts of the body. The fact that as humans we possess these cell surface sugars, such as N-acetylglucosamine, fructose, and mannose, and more, means that certain lectins bind to those sugars will affect us all, but to different degrees. Also, there are other genes that directly, indirectly affect how we deal with these lectins. So that's another one. Now, let me go into zonulin and gliadin. Gliadin is a peptide in gluten. I'm going to reference Dr. Alessio Fasano. He is one of the pioneers in discovering what zonulin does. He is probably going to win the Nobel Prize for this discovery, along with some of his other researchers. And you're going to love this. I forgot your name already, but this is perfect for those who are celiac and non-celiac. Besides bacterial exposure, the Fasano lab has shown that gliadin, it's a peptide in gluten, if you didn't know, also affects intestinal barrier function by releasing zonulin. And I'm sure you know what zonulin is. Gliadin's key components of gluten are complex proteins usually rich in prolines and glutamines that are not completely digestible by mammalian intestinal enzymes. The final product of this partial digestion is a mix of peptides that can trigger host responses, in brackets, increased gut permeability and innate and adaptive immune responses that closely resemble those instigated by exposure to potentially harmful microorganisms. Moreover, gliadin immediately and transiently enhances zonulin-dependent, increased gut paracellular permeability, irrespective of disease status. In fact, one of his studies, they had celiac disease patients, those that were non-celiac but with sensitivity, and those with non-sensitivity. It was a 4-part study. I can't remember, but this is his study. And upon the findings of gluten ingestion, every single person, regardless of their health status, showed increased gut permeability, resulting in leaky gut. So those findings are very, very powerful. It doesn't matter if you've got celiac or non-celiac or sensitivities. Every person showed, again, leaky gut, permeability in the gut when they consumed gluten through that process. Okay, I'm going to reference Dr. Tom O'Brien and just further expand on what gluten is. Most people refer to a reaction to gluten without confirmed celiac diagnosis as a gluten sensitivity, but a better description is wheat sensitivity. While celiac disease is an immune reaction to poorly digested proteins found in wheat, rye, barley, a non-celiac sensitivity to wheat can be the response to any of the many components in wheat. It could be the entire molecule of wheat, not just gluten proteins. It could be the lectins in wheat called wheat germ agglutinins, which are widely known to trigger the formation of blood clots. It could be a sensitivity to a family of carbohydrates in wheat known as FODMAPs, component most directly attributed to gasiness, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea. Or it could be a reaction to the family of chemicals in wheat called benzodiazepines. Yes, wheat includes these compounds found in prescription anxiety drugs, which is one reason why many people find carbohydrates comforting. Therefore, we refer to non-celiac wheat sensitivity, NCWS, as an umbrella term, and gluten sensitivity would fall under that umbrella. Let's continue. Now, I'm also going to reference the godfather of lectins. I wouldn't be able to reference this sort of video without referencing Dr. Stephen Gundry in the Plant Paradox. Just going to explain what lectins are, just so you've got a really good understanding of the compounds found in these foods. So what are lectins anyway? For the most part, with one important exception, they are large proteins found in plants and animals, and they are a crucial weapon in the arsenal of strategies that plants use to defend themselves in their ongoing battle with animals. Scientists discovered lectins in 1884 as part of their investigation into different blood types. Until now, you've probably been familiar with one famous, or rather infamous lectin, gluten. There are many more, and I'll soon introduce you to the important ones, and believe me, you'll want to know. Just a teaser, 94% of humans are born with antibodies to lectins in peanuts. How exactly do lectins help plants defend themselves? Well, lectins in the seeds, grains, skins, rinds, and leaves of most plants bind to carbohydrates, sugars, and particularly to complex sugars called polysaccharides in the predator's body after it consumes the plant. If you really want to go back in my Instagram, you'll see a video of the remnants of a tomato All right, I made this on my story this morning, but I had to come back and film this and put it on my feed. So what you're looking at are the skins, the remnants of a leftover tomato. I live out in the country, I have a garden, we are growing tomatoes and all sorts of other vegetables. And this little habitat, this dwelling here, is a home for a chipmunk. And this chipmunk intuitively knew that it needed to peel the skins of the tomato and even some of the seeds and not eat them. Why is that? Well, nature has an intuitive factor in all sorts of things. And tomatoes and the skins of tomatoes and the seeds are very high in lectins. What are lectins? Lectins are the chemical compounds found in various skins and seeds of vegetables and fruit. And it's a natural defense mechanism to prevent their predators from eating them. As a result, if they do, there's going to be an immune response, and it elevates cortisol and inflammation and so forth. In fact, this book here called Plant Paradox, written by Dr. Stephen Gundry, headline, "The Hidden Dangers in Healthy Foods That Cause Disease and Weight Gain." I actually tagged Dr. Gundry on that video, and then he shared it on his page too. Kind of funny. Lectins, like smart bombs, lectins target and attach themselves to sugar molecules primarily on the surface of the cells of other organisms, particularly fungi, insects, or other animals. They also bind to celiac acid, a sugar molecule found in the gut and the brain, between nerve endings, in joints, and in all bodily fluids, including blood vessels, lining of all creatures. Lectins are sometimes referred to as sticky proteins because of this binding process, which means they can interrupt messaging between cells and otherwise cause toxic inflammatory reactions. Believe it or not, some people, those who are more sensitive to lectins, are therefore more subject to viruses and bacterial infections than others. Think about it. If you seem to get sick more often than your friends do, this might be a culprit. Now, are you starting to see that there's some validity behind my statements about nightshades and gluten and processed foods? Let's continue. I'm going to reference one more book. This is a great one. This is Allergy Free. In the previous book, we referenced, or Dr. Gundry was talking about peanuts. So peanuts, another common allergen, contain aflatoxins, toxins excreted by molds, which can suppress the immune system. So that's just one little point about the peanuts. And let's just dive in a little bit further. And this book is Allergy Free by Dr. Conrad Kale and other authors, Bobby Lawrence and Bruton Goldberg. Dietary lectins are particularly damaging to the gastrointestinal linings. One study found that dietary lectins, especially those found in lentils, induced a significantly large release of histamine, causing tissue inflammation. Soybean and wheat lectins can produce an increased permeability in the cells they bind to, often leading to cell death. Further, lectins can cause the intestinal villi, those are the finger-like protrusions that allow the absorption within the cells into the body, to atrophy. Lectins are found in 30% of the foods we eat. They have characteristics similar to blood antigens and can thus sometimes become an enemy when they enter the body. Nutritionist Anne Louise Gittleman, author of Your Body Knows Best, she notes that there are 65 different lectins known to have an agglutination reaction in the body, leading to intestinal damage, disrupted digestion and absorption, and food allergies, among other health problems. Gluten, a lectin found in wheat and other grains, counteracts strongly with O blood and tends to cause gastrointestinal inflammation. Tomatoes provoke strong reactions in type A and B blood types, but are often properly absorbed by type O's and A and B. So again, if someone has health conditions, any form of chronic disease, any form of skin issues, gut issues, anything that's lingering, it would be wise to eliminate those types of foods simply because you have leaky gut. And so if you've got this leaky gut, we now know that there are substances that are essentially invading into the bloodstream, causing an immune response, weakening the immune response. And so again, if you've got leaky gut, you've got these other conditions, symptoms, that's an expression of leaky gut. it would be wise to remove those foods and follow the 4R system. Hope you found this valuable. Once again, big shout out and thank you to D. White Coleman, MD. Now, I want to raise another question. Is there a possibility that the schooling you went to is a little bit of a dogmatic system, and those who fund the curriculums might just be big agriculture and big pharmacy, and so the teachings and the learnings that you consumed was a little bit biased? I'm going to reference from my memory one of the chief editors from The Lancet, which is a highly respected medical published journal. I believe he said that 50% of all published studies are bought and paid for. And then if I do recollect correctly, there was another chief editor from Harvard Medical Journal. They said that most published articles are bought and paid for. So there's definitely a bias. And if you still believe that leaky gut is a non-issue, well, maybe I invite you to enroll in my advanced curriculum where I actually have taught different doctors and many, many nurses and first responders. And literally within the first 2 weeks of the curriculum, they've all said, I never learned this in my medical school. So if it's something that you're hungry to learn and you want to broaden your scope of awareness, send me a message. D. White Coleman, MD. Let's see if we can't get you on the other side and learn what functional medicine is. Everyone else, I hope you found this valuable. Hit a like, hit a share, hit a subscribe, and share this with someone that might benefit from this information. And again, if you want to heal and seal your gut, that's what I do. I can take a complex system and make it super, super easy for you to digest. Pardon the pun. Gut Whisperer out.